It's been a busy yet productive week in the General Assembly this week, dealing with a whole host of issues that the collaboration between the Senate and the House appears to be going well, and just hard to believe that we're 2 weeks from the finish line. Lots of things to button up and wrap up, but another good week, and look forward to a positive week working through agenda bills and other things as we get to the final stage of the session.
Mr. Speaker, on the immigration bill, with all the concerns that have been happening nationally with ICE and things have happened in Minnesota, a couple people shot and killed, is this the best time to focus on that with all the ICE issues right now?
Well, look, I thought Representative Prescott did a terrific job. I thought, Chairman Jeter was terrific in committee. Again, we're just aligning and making sure that we're following what is the federal standards and the law. And I think, I think people are extrapolating it to a full, much broader discussion on immigration. That's not what this is. It's much more narrow than that. I thought, again, Representative Prescott did a nice job of talking about that.
The House amended the bill to make it look a lot like last year's Fairness Act. Do you see the Senate ultimately agreeing with those changes?
I will let Senator Bray and the Senate speak for that. I know there were lots of conversations between Representative Prescott, Senator Brown, and others. So hopefully, but that'll be their call.
The stadium bill, you said you were going to Northwest Indiana last weekend. How did that trip go? It looks like there's been some movement in Illinois to keep the stadium there. What's the latest on that?
First of all, the meetings last week were fantastic. Tremendous support up in Northwest Indiana for this. Had a chance to talk to a lot of different people. Really enthusiastic about it. So came home feeling really appreciative of the great local leadership up there and how they're handling things. I'm optimistic. There's lots of work to be done. We got a week to do it, but really appreciate all the conversations that have taken place, and hopefully we'll have some action next week.
Is that a deadline? Is that a deadline? The end of this month?
Yeah, I think I've made it pretty clear that, look, we intend, if this is going to happen, we need to get done before we leave. That is the deadline.
If the stadium ends up stays in Illinois, in the Chicago area, does that, will that have meant that they kind of used Indiana as leverage? Will that have been a waste of our time and resources?
Well, look, we pursue a lot of different businesses on a daily basis, so there's always effort, especially one of these types of high profile. These are long discussions and those types of things, but totally worth the effort, and again, great collaboration between all the parties, and look forward to next week.
Can you address the needle exchange bill really quick? It was heavily amended to be a 2-year extension rather than a 10-year extension. Lots of advocates are saying this is harm reduction. What's your take on the needle exchange program in general?
Well, I think that we've had this since 2014. I think there's some we're just trying to find that sweet spot of what people want to continue to support, and gives counties flexibility to do this. I think what Dr. Barrett did in committee made the bill stronger, and I think gives it a much better chance of passage and signature by the governor. So I think we'll have that discussion early next week.
Mr. Speaker, given what we've seen in Minneapolis with ICE, do you have faith that they'll conduct themselves appropriately here with Hoosiers?
I do, and again, I think those were tragic accidents, and we should never, tragic situations, and we should never dismiss them. But, the vast majority of those interactions where ICE is trying to do their job, they're law enforcement. And I think, what Representative Prescott is trying to do is make sure that there's cooperation so that those types of incidents don't happen.
Mr. Speaker, what about the thing about written and unwritten rules? The written part is relatively easy for most folks to get their arms around. But what about the part about unwritten rules?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I know what you're referring to.
I believe it was something that law enforcement had to comply with ICE, whether the rules were written or unwritten. If you're a local law enforcement, how do you know what's an unwritten rule?
I'm not sure. I did not hear that.
Though, that ICE has detained American citizens. So what would you say to an American citizen who, for a lack of better words, is being racially profiled in Indiana? Do they just listen to ICE, or do they say, hey, no, I'm an American citizen?
Well, look, there's a process in which, and even the law strengthens that through the amendment that we took yesterday, to make sure that they have a process that they can acknowledge their citizenship. And that's what one of the amendments that we took, I guess as on Tuesday, did. Look, we want people that are here legally to stay here legally. We certainly want people that have committed criminal acts to be, to go through the ICE system. That's what this is intended for. That's what I believe this will do.
Haley Busby's celebration of life is this evening. Could you speak to legislative efforts in response to what happened?
Yeah, again, that was an emotional day on Monday. So appreciate her parents in a very difficult time coming here and meeting with us and testifying. Again, you saw the bill move. I think both bills have moved now, where the changes in the Amber Alert to make sure there's more flexibility for law enforcement in these types of scenarios, offer that Amber Alert, and then the work that's been done, Senate Bill 199 in the on the social media. So we continue to watch those bills move through the process, and again, just I was moved, like I think we all were on Monday, in talking to the family, and hopefully we'll get those things done. And again, there's a broader conversation about social media and making sure young people. I think Dr. Jenner said this in her testimony. I think there's a lot of awareness that we have to do about what social media does, both just not the content, but kids spending so much time on there, the algorithms, and not being very, frankly, being destructive to kids' brains.
Mr. Speaker, when the whole immigration conversation started, when Governor Braun was elected, he repeatedly said the worst first, and we've heard that. Does this bill move away from that concept?
No, again, I think the worst first has always been the situation. And again, like if you're an employer, I want to focus specifically on this aspect. If you're an employer and you are using illegal immigrants, you are giving yourself a competitive advantage over everyone else in this space. And I think, there should be a level playing field. I think we should never, ever forget and be compassionate for the fact that these are people, oftentimes in very difficult situations. We are a country of rule of law, and we need to have laws. We need to enforce laws. We also have to create equality between the businesses and the type of labor that's used to create a competitive environment. I think that's what this bill does. I think nobody wants to see anybody not rightly taken off the streets or doing those types of things. But again, if you're an employer and you're doing these things, you're doing them intentionally. There are many options for you to verify someone is here illegally. That should be your expectation. If you don't, there should be a punishment for it.
But there are some opponents of Senate Bill 76 who are concerned, given the protests that we've seen at high schools, that if you allow ICE to go in there and these colleges and high schools have to comply with these ICE detainer requests, that you might be setting up a situation like a tinderbox where you have these protests and then to have ICE come onto these campuses. Are you concerned?
No, again, guys, this is like most of these things, have been done in a collaborative way. I think that's been shown across the country. There have been some terribly unfortunate incidents. But, and I'm for people protesting. I think everybody has a right to protest. We had people here protesting. I think, as you guys know, most days we have people here protesting something. And they should let their voices be heard. But you also shouldn't engage and get in the way of law enforcement doing their job. And I think, that's we have to make sure that we find that right balance. Again, I think the narrative around this bill, the narrative around the immigration discussion are two different things. And I think I would encourage people to understand what's in the bill and not extrapolate it from a national narrative.
Respectfully, Mr. Speaker,
sure.
We've seen ICE come to court hearings where people are doing things the right way. They've showed up at naturalization ceremonies and telling people, hey, you did everything right, but now you're not allowed to be a citizen anymore. So what do you say to those people? Because that's what I'm hearing when I'm talking to people on the street who are concerned about this. Because that's happened. It's happened.
Again, that's a mistake that needs to be corrected. Okay. That's a mistake that needs to be corrected. But does that mean we're not going to enforce any laws? Does that mean we're not going to pick up anyone or anything? Because no, again, these things need to be corrected. But we have to have law enforcement. We have to have enforcement and of our laws. And again, this just creates the detaining. It doesn't, then puts it through the federal process. And I think that's the key in this. And again, the vast majority of our counties in this state and across the country are this relationship is working and working successfully because there is that type of collaboration and cooperation. This is what Senate Bill 76 tries tries to do.
Any thoughts on Who's Your Idol for Monday night?
I thought you were fantastic.
Last one.
With next week being the deadline to move things, there's a couple of bills came over from the Senate, the gender issues and the abortion pill restrictions. Are those going to be advancing over?
I think Dr. Barrett's still having conversations about that. I think they're both in his committee, if I remember right. So I think Dr. Barrett's probably going to have some conversations this weekend.
Do you expect those to be moving?
We'll see what Dr. Barrett decides.
And then the Senate hasn't taken up 1001, the housing.
No, we've had good conversations with Senator Garton, who's the sponsor of that bill, and we've had excellent conversations with the stakeholder groups on that bill. And I think Senator Garton's just trying to get consensus before he brings that bill forward.
Expecting major changes?
I think I said this from the House floor. There will be changes to that bill, and we're working in cooperation with them on it.
Has House leadership heard anything from ICE regarding them wanting to move to Carmel or set up shop in Carmel?
I just heard that on the media yesterday. I had no awareness to that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.